Welcome, fellow high seas cruisers. Chris here with High Seas Cruising, and welcome to today's video. Norwegian Cruise Lines. Well, they are back in the news again for once again leaving people behind in a cruise port. The last time we told a story about Norwegian leaving people behind was a cruise over in Africa. Now, in that story, though, they had taken a third party, an independent excursion tour. When the tour was late arriving back to the cruise port, the ship was gone, and of course, they had to make their own way to rejoin the cruise ship. This time, we have a family on board the Norwegian Encore. Well, they got left behind in Ketchikan, Alaska. But as I read through this story and I look at some of the information in the story, I really kind of wonder this time, was it Norwegian's fault? Well, it doesn't specifically say it was Norwegian's fault, and Norwegian, of course, didn't come out and say, oops, it was our fault. Now, as we go through this story, you guys are going to have to let me know. What do you think? Was this Norwegian's fault? Was it the family's fault? Personally, I kind of think that Norwegian should not have left this family behind. Now, this took place on July 12th. Like I said, in Ketchikan, Alaska, they had an excursion to go see the Lumberjack show. When the show was over, they headed to the buses, tried to board the bus heading back to the cruise ship, and were told by the bus driver, the tour operator, oh, the bus is full, you have to wait for the next one. Now, according to the family, though, they weren't checking to see who had tickets. They were simply counting the number of people who were on the bus, and the family is alleging that some of these people probably didn't belong on the bus, which is why they didn't have their seats. And even though they were told to wait for the next bus, no bus ever came. Now, they knew at this point they had to get back to the ship. They were running out of time. They called the port authority. A van was sent over to pick them up. They got back over to the cruise port just in time to see their ship sailing away. Now, at this point, this is when that very unexpected, unplanned for, and unfortunate adventure begins for the family, because as they're watching their ship sail away, their belongings are on the ship. Their luggage is on board the ship. Their medication is on board the ship. And the cruise line, of course, did collect up the passports from their cabins like they were supposed to, left them there with the port authority, except they only brought 8 of the passports off, and there was 9 of them in the group. So one of the passports did not make it off the ship, because the next stop for the cruise ship was in Canada, which means in order to fly from Ketchikan into Canada, they would have needed their passports, and the stop in Victoria was the last stop of their cruise before it went back on to Seattle. So they couldn't simply hop on a plane and catch up to the cruise ship at this point. So now they're on their own. They have to get lodging, pay for their food, make travel arrangements to try to get themselves back home. And while they're doing all of that, the next shoe drops, because the next day they get a really big charge from Norwegian Cruise Lines. $9,000 charge, which turned out to be $971 per person. Now, this is a charge you don't hear about all that often, but in this particular situation, doing an Alaskan sailing, well, it was a charge for violating the Passenger Vessel Services Act. That is the act that requires a foreign port be in all of your cruise itineraries. Why would you do an Alaska cruise? It stops in Victoria. Typically, you're only there for a couple of hours, not even enough time to really enjoy it before the ship heads back to Seattle the next day. But yeah, that is to be in compliance with the Passenger Vessel Services Act, and simply the fact they boarded the ship in Seattle, missed the ship in Ketchikan, never made the stop in Canada, put the entire family in violation of that act. Hence, they were charged $971 each as the fee and the fine. Now, they have finally made it home after what honestly they describe as a pretty grueling trip of flights, hotels, cancellations, just trying to get back to their home in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I guess the final icing on that cake is now they're saying that several other family members also have come down with COVID-19. Just to put a little topper here on what has turned out to be definitely not a great cruise experience. Now we're going to talk about why I think Norwegian is probably responsible for this and should never have left the family behind to begin with. Now, nowhere has it been confirmed yet that the passengers bought this excursion through the cruise lines. But the way Norwegian is responding to it kind of makes me believe that they did, and this is why we're getting this type of response from Norwegian. Because normally, if you miss the cruise ship and it's on you, the cruise ship just goes. And a lot of times they just leave you to fend for yourself. You're not going to get refunds for your cruise. You're not going to get reimbursement. They're not going to try to take care of your travel expenses. Yet in this case, Norwegian is doing exactly that. Now, according to Norwegian, before they departed Ketchikan, though, they tried to call members of the family. They went through, tried to reach out to them and say, hey, where are you at? But they did not get any response. They claimed they assisted the family in finding hotels, getting them accommodations, and helping them make travel arrangements to get out of Ketchikan. Different from what the family is saying, but that's what Norwegian is saying. Norwegian is going to reimburse them for their violation of the Passenger Vessel Services Act. That right there is almost $9,000. They will be refunded for all of their out-of-pocket travel expenses to get home, and the last 2 days of their cruise are also going to be refunded, plus a 20% future cruise credit. Norwegian calls the 20% future cruise credit a gesture of goodwill. But that's a lot of money for a cruise line to reimburse if they believed that it wasn't their fault. If this excursion had been booked through a third party, through an independent tour operator, do you really think the cruise lines would be like, oops, let's start reimbursing as much of this money? When was the last time you heard a story of a cruise line refunding the remainder of your cruise because you missed the ship? And we all know Norwegian is never going to come out and say, oops, it was all our fault. We did it. We shouldn't have left the people behind. They're never going to say that. I do think all of the signs point directly right at Norwegian Cruise Lines, and to me at least, it looks like they should not have left these people behind. They were on a cruise ship excursion purchased through Norwegian Cruise Lines, and in that particular case, the cruise line should have waited for them. That's how I read it. But how do y'all read it? Y'all see it the same way? Do you think the cruise line was wrong? Do you think this family was wrong? Let me know in the comments below what you guys think about this story. All right, and that is going to be our video for today. If you've enjoyed today's video, do me a favor and hit that like button. If you haven't done so yet, do me a favor and hit subscribe. It is free to do so. Helps our channel grow. Let you know anytime we put out a new video. Hope everyone out there is having a really great day, and like always, we will see you out on the high seas.